Good morning, Joe. How are we doing today?
Very good. How you doing, Ben?
Doing very well. Welcome back to the podcast, I guess we can say.
Thank you.
I think it's the third one, fourth one, something like that.
Yeah, all blending kind of together. This year's been pretty crazy. So.
Absolutely. We're gonna start calling you a regular here. But no, thank you for coming on this morning. Always great having you on, having a voice from the logistics industry. Obviously, we deal with it on the TCC side, but you guys are much more in the weeds and kind of know what's going on.
We try to
as best as anybody can with the logistics market these days. But welcome to our sort of 2021 recap, 2022 forecast episode, kind of closing out the year with that. I guess before we get into it, maybe if you want to just talk about TLC a little bit, introduce yourself for anyone that maybe hasn't seen the past episodes. Hopefully everyone's interested in our crystal ball for next year, so this episode gets a lot of views.
Yeah.
But for anyone that's not familiar with yourself and TLC, maybe just give a little background as we get started here.
Absolutely. So Joe Hassenfratz with the logistics company, sales and marketing manager. We do, we're a freight forwarder, so we specialize in liquid bulk, dry van, LTL, import-export, and ISO containers, multimodal transportation lanes. So very diverse company, and if there's something moving out there, we typically have a way to move it, and if not, it's probably something that we're not specializing in. So very diverse though, and looking to continue to grow those opportunities that we've seen, especially over the past 2 years. So
yeah, great resource for TCC. Obviously managing a bunch of different types of logistics, whether it's totes and drums, trucks, rail cars, import, export. Guys are a specialty of everything. So
yeah,
a great resource, and
not much we can't do.
The plus side of that is obviously you guys are in so many different types of logistics. You have kind of a good feel of what's going on in those markets, and not just doing bulk trucks or just doing packaging. But recapping 2021, obviously a very interesting year on the logistics side specifically. I think
Yes.
A lot of the topics were probably kind of the status quo from 2020, and probably will be a lot of them will be lingering into 2022 as well. But I know there's been a couple core topics, the ports back up, trucking tightness, especially with liquid bulk that we've seen on bulk liquid chemicals. Obviously some of these steady historic price increases both on truck freight and ocean freight. But those are kind of the big ones. So, I guess starting off with the ports backup, obviously that's something we've dealt with all year and continues to be a pain point, I'm sure, for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in 2020 to 2021, we saw the major ports really get hit with, congestion that we've never really seen before. Kind of showed some glaring holes in the infrastructure that existed that some were predicting could potentially happen if there wasn't some sort of adjustment made. Those adjustments weren't made in time, so we're now all realizing the crunch that is all of the ports right now. So some of the smaller ports are also seeing a trickle over effect, and I think everybody's trying to outsmart the system right now.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, everybody is in the same boat, literally in the same boat, waiting out at the ports to have their product unloaded. So
where do you draw that line from, like a bigger port or a major port? So like when you say smaller ports, so is that like the Savannahs of the world? Is that still considered?
Yeah, and even Savannah at this point is considered maybe not even the smallers. Some down in the New Orleans area, and any of the trickle down effect of throughout the East Coast and West Coast. The major ones, obviously, New York, LA, Houston.
Yeah.
Those are the hot points that everybody tries to initially see if they can get their product in. But inland ports as well. Chicago's a huge inland port via rail. So again, everybody's trying to maneuver whenever they can, pivot as quickly as possible to get their product offloaded as quickly as possible. But it's kind of the unfortunate new norm that we're up against right now.
Yeah, and some of those inland ports, it's something I hadn't really thought about before, but that provides a unique issue too, because the port of Long Beach, you can have 60 tankers floating offshore. You can't exactly have 60 tankers floating in the Chicago River, whatever, however they get inland, but there's obviously much less room for error and backups and things like that. So I'm sure that's been a whole unique supply chain problem too.
Yeah, absolutely. The rail has been quite congested heading into and out of Chicago. So
yeah. And that kind of brings up to the next point with the trucking tightness. I think a maybe positive byproduct of using some of these smaller ports, the Mobiles and Charlestons of the world, is with how tight trucking's been, you're really trying to get material into ports as close to your warehouse or end customer as possible. So trucking out of, I'm sure New York and Savannah has probably been quite the nightmare, but maybe some of these smaller ports, even though there might be less trucks available, just a less popular or less dense area, has hopefully been one of those avenues people can use to relieve some of this trucking tightness.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it the past few podcasts, but getting the container as close to your end user as possible certainly gives you a leg up in trying to get that out, especially before, hopefully, demurrage starts accruing. But
Right.
getting a truck in there to get it out usually is a little bit easier when you're saying that, the end destination is only X amount of miles as opposed to, my God, how are we going to
Right.
get it to that destination?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting topic. And I'm sure people will be happy to pay a couple $100 more or whatnot to go to one of these sort of secondary ports if it means you can actually get it out on time or
Yeah.
close to on time versus,
Absolutely.
kind of who knows how long it'll take. So
Yeah, I mean, a couple $100 could be, one day of demurrage at some of the other ports.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think something else we really saw starting in the beginning of the year and kind of throughout the year is some of these price increases on a lot of freight, whether it's ocean freight, truck freight, some of the LTL lanes. Obviously, you being more on the sales side versus the operations side, you're probably getting yelled at all day long by customers, talking about where this price come from or, why is this jumping up? But I'm sure that's something you've had to battle with all year long.
yeah, I think especially the first half of 2021, a lot of the opportunities that were presented to us were to see if we A, had capacity, and B, could move it within a competitive rate. Now it seems to have shifted to can you move it?
Right.
The old phrase of, I used to move it for X amount of dollars. I think people are realizing that X amount of dollars that you used to move on the same line haul is long gone. So
Yeah, used to could have been a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Those are three very different rates that you would have seen at those times.
absolutely, yeah. That's unfortunately we're shifting to can we move it? Can we get it to our end destination? And I think once people start realizing that hey, this is moving on this rate, that's just going to have to be part of the added cost to do whatever you're trying to do.
So you on the sales side, a lot of your customers are coming to you saying, hey, do you have capacity for this? Less about can you beat this rate or whatnot. It's just about who can move what.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. If the rate
within reason.
Yes, exactly. They're still very price conscious, and we have to be very competitive in that regard. But just having capacity gives you such a leg up right now. So with our diverse carrier network, we usually can find solutions for our customers, and that's key to our sustained growth.
Yeah. Would you say capacity throughout the year has gotten better, worse? Has it been tougher in the second half of the year versus the first half of the year? Or is it?
In certain regards, I think in the liquid bulk, I think we're starting to realize that what used to be a reasonable line haul for some of these carriers is no longer reasonable for them. Anything outside kind of the 250 to 300 mile range is now considered a long haul, and they're so backed up with.
What was it before? 500 miles, something.
Yeah, and for the right dollar amount, they'd still entertain the offer. Now it almost seems to just be nosebleed pricing to kind of move along the request instead of saying no. They're just saying, hey, we could do it for this ridiculous amount. So, they have so many other demands locally within that 250 mile that if you're outside of that, then you're probably going to be bumped to the back of the line or just told outright no.
Right. So that brings us to 2022, of course.
Yeah.
I saw a good meme the other day. It was like 2022 is just 2022. So it's, going to be a repeat of 2020 with how bad COVID's gotten and everything else happening, a lot of shutdowns and whatnot starting to come up here the last couple of weeks. But yeah, 2022, I'm sure will certainly be interesting. We're right here in the last 2 weeks of December. So I know you guys are probably talking a lot about January, or people trying to even get load shipping in the next, I guess, before January 1, which is questionable at best.
Yeah. I think if you don't have it on the books at this point, you're up against it.
Yeah. But looking ahead to next year, I'm sure, what's kind of the outlook for Q1, or even, I guess you could kind of even separate maybe just January and February, because I'm sure that'll be quite a busy time. But what's kind of your general outlook for what to see in the early half of next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the theme is tempered expectations. Post-holiday, everyone thinks the trucks are all magically going to become available. Again, people are booking so far out in advance, or carriers don't want to book that far out in advance because they have so many requests as it is that they're kind of taking it a week at a time at this point. Post-holiday certainly will alleviate some of the capacity crunch we're looking at, but I don't think to the point that we should see the pearly gates open up for us.
Right.
And the Chinese New Year certainly will hopefully slow things down a little bit. But again, I think the ports are so congested at this point that even with those slowdowns, it's just going to continue to be an issue for the very near future. So I say tempered expectations just because I think it's a matter of trying to dig out of the hole that we're already in at this point. And I don't think there's just a magical pill that, alleviates all of this overnight. So.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point earlier where it's, I used to pay this or I used to get that. And that's the market is changing so quickly just because you used to get a truck in 5 days and now it's taking you 12 days. That's just kind of the market. That's kind of where things are at. It's not, hey, this 1 week, it's all of a sudden bad. It's just kind of the way that the market's gone. Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll keep getting worse. Maybe it'll start to get better at some point. But I think that's a good way to put it with the tempered expectations. Yeah. That's just, you got to understand there's going to be delays and things happening and everyone's trying to do their best. It's just such a shortage. It's the market we're in.
Absolutely. I think 2020 and 2021, we were already dealing with a major driver shortage as it is. We're starting to see that, that average age of 55 isn't coming down. Yeah. And when we talk about individuals that, due to 2020 and 2021 not coming back into the workforce, there's a sizable chunk that's that 60 to 70 age range of those drivers that are just not coming back. So they were into early retirement as a result of all of this, and we're just never going to see those again. So that on top of it just kind of compounds the issue.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about kind of plans for next year, what people can do. And we kind of talked about this idea of sort of getting creative, whether it's looking at totes, which might have a little bit better availability than trucks, short-term on-site storage, potentially looking at rail or intermodal if you haven't in the past.
Yep.
I'm sure that's something you guys are trying to preach to customers. And
absolutely.
A big benefit to using TLC is you guys have your hands in all these different types of logistics. But I'm sure getting creative is going to be a big part of your pitch on the sales side for next year with trying to temper expectations and get stuff moved, get material to customers. That's obviously the end game.
Absolutely. From a shipping standpoint, being able to utilize an ISO tank and move that multimodally instead of just hoping that a liquid tank truck will kind of solve all your issues. People are going to have to start getting creative. And I think that also comes down to the end customer as well. So often, especially pre-COVID, we saw, hey, we need this truck enabled with this hose or center load and rear load. And I think you're going to have to start seeing some companies either adjust those expectations or look at their infrastructure themselves to say, hey, why do we need that? Is there something that we can adjust on our side to allow for greater capacity for their demands? There something
making your freight more appealing? I think we talked about, right?
Amen. Yeah, I think that's really what it is, and or just allow your end user to get that product, right. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
Well, we'll certainly see what 2022 has to bring. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting, especially January and first quarter. Excited to start getting back to some of these regular trade shows, getting out, talking to people, seeing what's going on in the market. Hopefully have a more normal calendar year of trade shows and events, which I'm sure we'll be able to see TLC at, for the springtime. So looking forward to getting back out, seeing people and seeing what happens for Q1.
Yeah, we'll see what variants come up that might hopefully not stifle that, but it seems to be kind of the current environment we're dealing with. So we'll be out there. We'll be present at a lot of those trade shows and looking forward to meeting with people face to face again and building our network. So. Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you again for coming on. I'm excited to have you on for a couple more episodes in 2022. We'll see how correct some of our projections were and if any customers or accounts are taking advantage of some of these creative supply chain solutions. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say come Q1 to see what the market looks like. But appreciate having you on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, Ben. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.